back with another painting video. Sorry that we're starting this video a little on the later side. I was trying to... I wanted to take a break after playing a little bit of the Guardians of the Galaxy game. It's super, super cool and awesome, and I doubled down and did 2 videos today. So it caused this one to get a little started on the late side. So I do apologize for you folks that are avid fans and want to see me paint miniatures. So I do apologize that we got to a later start for this video today. But we're going to give it a shot. We're going to see what happens. And push forward, I promise. We'll be more on it for next time. So we're going to do a model review. And we're also going to do... continued painting on my troll, and I have a few other odds and ends that we might be painting or doing some touch-ups on today. And I have everything ready to go, a little bit more organized than usual, which is always a good thing and a positive for me. But I'd like to do the troll and then actually start working on this larger model, which we're going to talk a little bit about. So it is going to be Age of Sigmar heavy again, but I will start to do some 40K painting as well. I have a couple of models lined up that you will see me kind of wrap up and finish. So first off, we're going to do a review of this big boy, big guy right here. This is one of the newer Orc units for Age of Sigmar, one of the new Orc faction that they have. I've talked about them before. They're actually from the same army. So this is a larger single character model. And then we have the troll that we're working on and painting as well. And these are both from that faction, which are from the land of Gur. So that's why they are big on the whole enslaving monsters to do their bidding. So I'm going to put this way so you guys can see it. But you can see the detail on this model. It is pretty ridiculous, pretty awesome. And the character that this model is, I'm going to pull up. Give me one sec. I'm going to pull up the website because I actually forgot the name. Because this is a model you could do 2 variants on. You can either make it a big boss character, or you could do an actual named character with it. Games Workshop. All right. New and exclusive. New releases. See if it's still under new releases. Of course. Let's see, because all the Underworld stuff is going to be up there potentially before this. Oh. Alright, we might be getting a little closer. I hate when I get stumbled. Oh, my computer's going to be annoying now. Yeah, they're just... Games Workshop's website is so... It's so badly designed. It really is annoying. Oh, wait. I think I'm going to find it. It's funny. I found all the other models. I don't know. It's all the Underworld stuff. They're just going to be annoying. Alright, Grand Alliance. Alright, I think I found it now. There we go. Alright, so it's Godspraka, the Mouth of Mork. There we go. Godspraka, the Mouth of Mork. So I built it as that model. So that is What is the difference is that if you build it as the boss figure, you don't get this character on top. So there's a named character on top of the big beast. I wanted to build it that way because I looked at the stats of the two, and I liked one of my favorite models in the army. Oh, Easy Gaming, what's up? Yeah, so it's a very cool model. I very much like it. So I got it built up and primed. I wanted to do my review of it. It was a cool model. Now, out of all the new models, because I built the chariot for the Stormcast Eternals with the troll that we're going to be painting in a minute, and those were snap together models. They were snapped together. They weren't cut or anything like that. This was a glue together model. It was pretty good, I have to say. It was a pretty decent model. Where I wasn't too keen on, I actually changed it. I really hated how they did the goblin on here, because in the original build it was very hard to see him. So I actually moved that out a little bit. So I kind of moved it, positioned it. Living the dream. I'm waiting till I catch up on my Stormcast Eternals to buy this. Yeah. I'm definitely, you're gonna start seeing me doing my Stormcast. I'm gonna be doing that on the channel as well. I have them all sectioned out, and I'm gonna be doing them as the Stormcast Eternal Stronghold, which are the color scheme for them is gonna be the ones that actually are stationed right where Nagesh is doing the whole invasion of the Death Army. So they're actually holding him at bay. Or holding those forces at bay, so they have black armor. They're not gold like the original ones, black and red. Because they're like a death faction of the Stormcast Eternals, because all they do is fight death. And they're in that realm. So, very, very cool. They're very different than golden Stormcast Eternals, which I am a bigger fan of. I don't know if I have an example of one of them. Felt like I did. Is this one? No. Nope. No, I guess I don't. I must have put them in my box. Okay. But yeah, they're going to be black and red with purple. They're very cool. So they're kind of like taking on the Death Order colors, but they're Stormcast Eternals, because I wanted to make my Stormcast Eternal army different and more interesting. So you're going to see those painted up. Okay, cool. So that was one complaint I had. So I actually moved him so you could see him a little bit better in the model. Let me go to my close-up cam so you guys can see some of the detail. But I do like the character on top. I do like the way he's posed. But yeah, you can see I actually made him... Actually tilted him a little bit. But yeah, the details on this model, very, very well done. I love the branded lines into the creatures. Again, a very cool creature. I probably could have went with the other head just to change it out, although the neck would be different. But I like it. I like the model. I guess I could have done that. Maybe I should have went with the opening head, but just a great, great creature. Great model to use in some other series as well. Another area that I didn't really like on the model was how this connected. So how you had to put that in there. It was... I might have to... it'll be okay. But yeah, the way this pushed down, it was very, very flimsy. You had to push in. The fitting was really hard to get it inside. The only thing I'm not a fan of is the cloaks of the Kroll Boys named characters. It's really hard to get to some of the folds and faces, even with sub-assembly. Yeah, I'm just so used to it. I've said this on a couple of occasions in the stream. I am one of those painters. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry guys. I'm one of those painters who cannot, I can't paint a model in assembly. I know other people can do it. I can't. I need to see the model. I need to see the details of the model. I do shading based on even how shadows from lighting actually hit the model. I pick shadowing based on that, and which is kind of odd, but that's so when you actually have it in a room, it looks the right way. So like a great example is, and it's very appropriate, but for a more traditional orc, let me get to my close-up cam. My boss orc, you guys will see. Oh, which I just realized he's got some shortcomings on him, but like I'm gonna look at the way that he's painted, and I'm gonna make decisions even on things like the weaponry or the armor, so that I have the natural way light is gonna hit him, so I can create those shadows. And you guys will see that in a lot of the different models that I have. So like even here, you could see that I've chosen to darken and do different things based on the way light actually hits the model. So I do base that into my actual design. And I just can't do that with assembly, so that's part of why. All right, so, but yeah, I would give this a strong, I love that it's a multi-model. Maybe I might give it another ding on the creature itself. I mean, like, if you do the name character, they make you put kind of a very basic head on it, versus if you do the boss, which is just like a champion, and they give you like a yelling head. I guess I could have customized, like I said before, I might have wanted to customize it and probably put the other head on because it would have looked more interesting. But I guess that's like one of my complaints, that it's a little bit more of a pose creature and not as action oriented as a creature. And even the troll has a little bit of that aspect to it, so it's kind of a difference in how they do things. But that is the model we're going to review. I give it a pretty high mark for a nice large scale character and monster. Traditionally in Warhammer Fantasy, monsters don't always do very well. So it'd be interesting when it gets on the table to see what it's going to do. But I know monsters tend to have not as good stats as other stuff. So they tend to be a little bit on the unforgiving side. And I know people like the old adage with them is that, like, for the most part, you'll put a monster on the table and then like 2 seconds later your opponent's gonna like blast it out of the sky. And that happens a lot because people just like target monsters, and it's very easy to target them because unlike characters, they can't do lookout sir or like other rules to protect them. Yeah, I'm on my close-up cam. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a little bit of details. Because what I wanted to start to figure out is what I'm going to do for some of the little blemishes on him. And I think this is gonna prevail. I think doing them as purple will be interesting. I was thinking about like what colors would look good, but I think purple is gonna be the color to do the blemishes in. I was gonna do them in yellow. I was gonna do them in orange, but I'm like, then it's gonna look like hair, and I'm like, I wanted to start getting some of these little things painted so I could start bringing the I could start bringing the blue back in to get some to bring that dimension. But you could see already, I think the purple is the right choice because it just looks really cool. And I'm gonna embrace that, you know, sort of our wacky, you know, my sort of wacky World of Warcraft troll that I made. This sort of paint style that I created, which I think is kind of fun actually. Because, I don't know, part of me also wants to have, what's the word? I want to have, you know, painting options. Painting options. I want to have model options, so if I want to, like, incorporate him in Blood Bowl, or I want to incorporate him in other places, I can do that. Oh, Izzy Gaming, thank you so much for following. I'm a big fan. Thank you, and thanks for popping up a chat too. And Izzy Gaming, who just followed us, are you also a gaming channel? Or what's your deal? With a game like Izzy Gaming, I would have figured you are probably a gaming channel, but I could be wrong. Let me know if I spoke out of turn, but yeah, because if I get all these like little blemishes done, then I could start, like I said, coming back in with those other blue colors, so I could start bringing in the other stuff. And for you folks that are maybe just joining us tonight, as a reminder, I do painting 3 times a week. So tomorrow night I'll be giving Mantic Games some love. So we'll be continuing to work on the rest of the League of Infamy box game that they have. And yeah, I'm going to see what happens with these. I'll have to do those. Actually, those kind of look cool. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to re-whiten those, because now you have an imbalance. Like, you'll have all those on one side, but you're going to have another side that doesn't have the same level of that. But we'll get it there. Or Izzy Gaming, are you somebody who makes gaming supplies? Or because I know for a few of the folks that I do actually get models from on, like, you know, places like Etsy and stuff, they've actually started following me, and they usually pop up and say hi on my streams as well. Which you will start to see some of those folks and some of the models I'm getting from them featured as well. So I'm trying to get all those little details and blemishes, so starting to build that up. As you can see, and now that those little details are getting filled in, I think you're going to see the troll start to emerge as a pretty nice model. because right now that's holding it back a lot, because when you see it, you know, you're seeing you're seeing some of that lack of detail starting to hurt, and I'm going to be going in and doing some darker tones like you saw me doing just now. So like with the with things like those rivets, I'm going to go back in and you're going to see a nice some line work in there, which is going to make, you'll see all of that pop so nicely. And just that alone, like just what I did now, you can see how that tightens that up, and you have just a nice looking detail on there. Yeah, so now what I'm doing is I'm going back, now that I got that purple in there, I'm just going back with the blue, and I'm basically closing up some of the edges and lines that maybe I either misjudged or thought were going to be Sorry guys, hold on one second. I'm getting, it's every time I'm on a stream, I feel like I get 1,001 questions. Oh, and I think it's already happening. Oh, good. Sorry guys, I'm gonna get back to painting, I promise. Sorry guys, give me 1 second. I am doing other things while I'm supposed to be painting. Let's go here. Just give me a second, guys. I'm sorry. Oh my god. People always ask me for stuff. Alright, heroes. I'm sorry, guys. Alright, I'm like trying to interact and do this. Alright. Sorry, guys. Alright, let's get back to painting. Funny enough, I'm trying to work out models. Okay. Alright, sorry guys. Wow. Sorry guys. Ah. Alright. Sorry. I'm like trying to figure things out. We're trying to get this campaign together with all these models, so I'm trying to work out a couple of things because I have just recently I have access to somebody who has a 3D printer, so I can use a lot of these services to like basically make my own models and get them printed. So I'm just trying to work out like some details because I have this homebrew idea for a D&D campaign that I want to do like the proper way. So we're just like trying to figure out all the basics. So I'm like messaging people while I'm doing streams, which I don't usually like doing that, but I know with the way my week is gonna go, I just don't have the time to text people. So I'm like going on like crazy crazy like autopilot trying to figure out what is going on. So I'm just tidying up the blue because I'm noticing there was a lot of like cracks and holes in it. And then I'm going to go back to doing that. And then what I'm going to do while we're at it on this side... Oh, shoot. I opened up the wrong thing. All right. Is I'm going to... I'm going to just go over some of these in white. Just places where I know there are some blemishes that I didn't do a good job of staying clear of when I was painting. So I could get those blemishes back to being white. And then I'll be able to do the purple on top of them. So I'm just looking through. Because with the contrast paints, the problem is... when you have something as intense as that blue, you can't put the purple on top of it. It doesn't work. So, I'm just going back over it so I can continue to do that nice detail on there. So, because as always, and I always found it funny about these bigger models, is that, and I think I said it last time, you know, with the bigger models, they have such an opportunity to do so many more details and blemishes and marks on them that you'd be surprised how much you got to paint. And that's why big models, I can paint them pretty fast, but I like to take my time. And I think I mentioned this in the last stream when we started. But I do it because what was I saying? I said in last stream that, you know, with big models like this, it's you know, it's an eye draw to your army. So I always want to do these models with a lot more care and with a lot more detail, because they're gonna be something that you're gonna have on the table, and 100% the folks that you're playing with, you know, it's gonna be one of those models they're definitely gonna see. As I was saying before, unfortunately, probably their next move is they're gonna be quick to sniper it off the table because it's a big giant monster, and big giant monsters will sometimes hit with the force of 1,000 suns. And trolls in general are not particularly always wanted on the table because they usually have regeneration. They have a couple of other abilities that are kind of ridiculous. Especially because the more modern, since the more modern Age of Sigmar shooting is like not really existent, so you can't shoot stuff anymore. So it is very, very quickly apparent that you are outnumbered. And if monsters get to you, they can do a significant amount of damage to your army and to your force. So people are pretty quick to take something like that off the table. Now, a little trick that I've learned with like blemishes and stuff like this, you probably guys notice I'm doing like a circular motion. That's because what it does usually is it'll give you pooling at the base of the blemish. So you'll get a pool at the base of it, and then the rest of it will be lighter. So it kind of builds in a nice texture and feel to it. So it feels a little bit more like a whitehead, like a pimple, which is something that I started learning to do as I worked more and more with the contrast, because you know what we talked about is if you are a more seasoned, you know, traditional Warhammer painter, you're used to Citadel paints and everything is very opaque, so you're just going to lay and slab that color on. With the contrast, you got to sort of layer it differently, and you may go back over it, and you're still going to do, or probably will do, some of your edge highlights, but as the contrast is, you shouldn't have to go back over too much stuff. That's the whole point of the contrast, is that you can just go in there and very quickly have a model that's going to look very good. Now you guys can notice when I do the same thing on the light green, it actually works. So I can go over that purple with that light green. It works very, very well. Alright, so again, what I am noticing is when I start the video late, you guys don't always come for the ride. So note to self, I gotta just get used to doing that one video. I shouldn't have done 2 of the gaming videos tonight. That was a mistake, and I'm sorry to you guys for that, because it made me start this video about an hour later than I should, and I'm sure there were people here waiting for me. I'm sure there were people so you guys can already see. Now, I may have to whitehead a few of these because there is a little bit of a color anomaly happening on some of them, so I'm gonna have to play around with that. In general, what you guys are also probably noticing is the stuff that I actually had to re-whiten. It's gonna be brighter than the other ones because I did it with Cortex white, whereas everything else was gray sear, so it tends to cool down the colors. But that variation might actually be fun because it's always nice to have a variation. Because if you think about it, there are blemishes on the skin and they're whiteheads or they're whatever. So, you know, part of where people forget when they're painting is that when you're painting something that is a monster, even a monster or something that's fictional, it's the blemishes and it's the unevenness or lack of symmetry that sometimes creates those realistic moments on your model. So a lot of people have a tendency of like everything has to be like a perfect thing, but sometimes those inconsistencies, those differences in tone, those things that are not normal actually drive the model to be more realistic, because that is that is something that if you have model design, you could tell a good model maker or a good sculpt by somebody who realizes that. So they actually, you know, will make like one eye not the same size as the other eye, so everything is not perfectly symmetrical, because human beings are not perfectly symmetrical. Actually, it's a misconception, it's a misnomer that a lot of people have. But you can test, you can check out my theory. Usually the easiest way to check out that theory is with shoes. You probably have never noticed it before, but one of your shoes will always feel tighter than the other shoe. And that's because one of your feet is actually bigger than the other foot. One of your arms is usually longer than one of your other arms. One of your legs, like everyone is built that way because we're not perfectly symmetrical. No one in the planet is perfectly symmetrical. Which is why if you ever see someone who gets plastic surgery, that's why they always look very odd, because they no longer look human. Because if something is perfectly symmetrical, it actually messes with a human being's head. I'm going to paint a second color on this. I'm just doing it for right now. I was going to do something else, but I just realized... Nah, I think I'm going to... No, I'm not going to do that. I know what I'm going to do. Again, I'm sort of embracing the world, like I said, the World of Warcraft color scheme. Just making it really wacky and vibrant. I tend to do that with orcs. I said this on the previous stream. I like orcs that are nuts. Now, what I don't know... No, I guess that's all rope. Yeah, that's all tied rope. Okay. I wanted to say if it's wood, but it's not. It's all tied rope. So I'm going to do Skeleton Horde. Which I have another one. I'm going to probably have to go get that one at some point. Because my Skeleton Horde is starting to get... Because I love doing Skeleton Horde for ropes or anything that's like... Just wait until you guys start to see that done. Once we get this painted on him, it's gonna look... He's gonna look super, super awesome. Now, I might go in, which I probably will go in, but I might go in to like the crossover stitch, and I might use a different brown just to darken it, or metal, because if I'm not mistaken, I think that's actually like, I don't think that's string. I think that's actually like metal rings that are like stuck to his body. I think it's weird. I don't know. They don't look that way. They look like tied things, but like that, I don't know if, because there looks like there are stitches in him. So I don't know how I'm gonna do that. I may make those like metal rings, like they're bolted into them. I'm actually gonna get my bigger brush. But you're going to see this model like really kick it up a notch as I put in some of these details. Because right now, when we were just doing the skin, he looked a little weird because you kept seeing all the white down there. But you can see now, as I'm putting in all that detail, it's really starting to pop the model. So, and you know, I got to do a few other odds and ends to it. Oh, where is it? Where's my artificer brush? I'm going to get a bigger brush, just a bigger, so I could do one pass and really get all that stuff. And what this will also help with, too, is it'll help with another thing, which is I'll be able to get the blue and everything a little closer, because not that I started having trouble seeing the white, but I don't know. I find sometimes when you have the white model, because, and it's more when I'm painting live for you guys, I have to use a lot of lighting, and the lighting blows out the model a little bit. It blows out the white, at least for me, from the angles that I'm seeing it from. For you guys, it looks nice and crystal clear. Some of that is also my iPhone. My iPhone, because I use my iPhone to shoot. I'm actually going to be starting to use a second iPhone for certain things But it does a correction, so it actually corrects. It corrects the lighting with software. So you guys are seeing a better version of what is actually there. So for me, it could be a little bit more blown out. So for the white, it can sometimes be very hard for me to see where the edges of things are. So once I get that laid down, something like that brown, it'll help me to know like where that is. Yeah, because already, like, you'll see that dark blue, and actually by doing this now I just found a couple of more of the other little details. And I'm focusing on the troll because I just wanted to get the troll's color scheme right, and then I'll focus up here because this is going to be one of the first newer orcs that I've painted. And why that's significant and important is because that means that they're going to set the tone for the rest of the army. So I want to make sure that I take a minute and try to figure out how and what I want that tone to be. Which I have a pretty easy idea. I mean, so what I'm going to be doing for them is obviously orc skin's going to be green. Orc tree is going to be green. You can see the armor I'm doing red, which I already kind of decided on. So that's all going to be that. But what is going to be also true and also different is that I think I'm going to do black. And the reason why I'm going to do the black is so if I ever want to combine them with my other goblins, which I think you can, the Gloom Spite gets. I think you can put them in there. You can. I'm going to have them kind of be a similar color scheme, so I'll be able to do that easily. So like all my orcs, for the most part, are going to be the same. The only one that you saw was different was the Iron Jaws. As I get more of the Iron Jaws, I have very little of them right now, but I want to expand that army as well. And when I get more of them, they'll have their own faction. And then that also, the reason I'm doing that is that ties into my Blood Bowl, my Blood Bowl team, because the Black Orcs, I'm making them like the Iron Jaws. So it's like it's their team that's playing, especially when we actually do my goal, which is to do a league game. So you'll start to see me paint some of those models up as well. Alright, so Warhammer didn't get a big draw this week. Interesting, because lately I've been pretty good about sticking on the schedule, and I actually got quite a few more views. Now, if you guys want to see Mantic Games models or some indie models also, that's going to be tomorrow night, so that's a great time to tune into that if you guys want to see some alternative games. And then Marvel Crisis Protocol we did last night, so if you want to see me painting Marvel models, that's going to definitely be a good thing. And then I'm just going in and tidying some stuff up. Some were blemishes, some weren't. So what you guys are seeing me doing now is I'm just tidying up the space because I want to get some of that blue in there. And hopefully what you guys are walking away with is that he's starting to look really, really good. and looking interesting, because that's what I want. But I said this last week. I said that I have a particular affinity for anything creature related. I love stuff that's creatures or monsters. I always find that fun to paint. I find it extremely fun to paint. I find it extremely interesting to go through and have. Oh, we're gonna do a little bit there. Yeah, so you guys are just seeing me like tidying up the little stuff, because we want to have a gradation of color, so it looks like, because that's how skin would be. Natural skin would move from one color to another, so we want to have that in there, so we have a nice setup. But let's get some more of those chains and stuff. I'm bouncing back, which I don't usually do that, but as you guys who are veterans to the channel and who have been watching me paint, you know that I like to I like to do one color at a time. I like to paint any area with that color usually, so that all the tone and the amount of that color is even. Because with contrast, if you jump around and paint stuff, if you go back over something that you already painted, you'll notice that it'll give you a darker tone. So that's one. And two, if you go contrast, if you go over it while it's wet, you'll start wet mixing on your model. So you don't want to do that either. And contrast paint, I push it a little bit, but you're really supposed to wait. You're actually supposed to wait 15 minutes for it to dry. So that's why I do the color trick, because by the time I'm done doing one color, usually the other parts, the parts of that color have dried. So then I can come back and I can do the rest. I can paint in that area with a different color. So if you plan out how you're painting, usually it works out real well. And again, we're painting Age of Sigmar because it is. Oh, I said I wasn't going to paint this tonight. I actually was going to paint other models. That's really funny. All right, well, I set it up anyway. We're going to paint our troll. It's, really to celebrate. I'm going to take a cue out of GW's book, which is celebrating Orctober, which is their, we'll call it Halloween celebration. What was funny was I actually was going to paint vampires tonight, and I completely didn't. I could still paint vampires, but the troll model, we weren't that far along with it, so I wanted to get it further along before I subbed it out for another model. But I have the Curse City box set, which I would love to play a little bit of Curse City, but I didn't get all the models painted yet, and I don't know. I get hung up on that with you guys, like I want to have all the models painted before we review something, but I may have to just start reviewing stuff that's not painted, because there's just one of little old me to paint all this stuff, so I don't have the bandwidth right now to paint everything all the time, at least on a schedule where you guys could actually see us play stuff. That may not happen. I'm definitely getting there. I mean, like, I will be honest with you guys. I'm probably not that I'm gonna stop buying stuff, because I'm still gonna buy new stuff. Contrast mod check. Yes. This is contrast paints that I'm using. Contrast paints with so contrast primer, contrast paints, and I apologize for not calling out the paint. I did before, but I'm using Skeleton Horde for the cabling or lines. I always forget what this one's called. The Talasar blue for the certain parts of the skin, and then I use the turquoise blue, which I always forget what it's called, which is athermatic blue. That's what it's called. Athermatic blue, which is his just normal skin tone. And then I use the Margot's purple for his like little pimples. That's all I've applied to this model so far, and I use Gray Seer for the contrast. And that's Antro 92. How are you? I don't know if that's a good or a bad response. I think it's a like, but I hope it's a eh. Yeah, I usually use Skeleton Horde for like claws or for toes or any of that stuff. I like using Skeleton Horde for that, because what it does is, and I'm going to be a little messy on my base because I'm going to go over my base with mud and other stuff. But I like it because it usually makes everything look dirty. I like teeth looking dirty. I like other stuff looking gritty. I like my models to look gritty and a little bit more realistic. So not to say that the GW airbrush way is not like a good way, but I don't know. I don't want everything to look like a pristine, perfect model. I want them to have character and look different and have a little bit more art to them. Not a lot of people use contrast, it seems. I'm kind of interested in contrast, but I don't do minis. Okay. Yeah, so I'll tell you why a lot of people don't use contrast. I'm glad you brought it up. A lot of people don't use contrast, and I'll be very, very blunt about it. A lot of people don't know how to use it. So they'll buy the contrast paints, because this is how GW marketed contrast. They marketed contrast as you could just slide. So they really marketed it as like it was a magical. It was this magical paint that you could just slap on a mini and like it'll be table ready in 2 seconds, and everything will be okay. Yeah, so they made it like a one coat magic. But that's not how contrast works. So I'll show you an example really quick. I'm going to take my troll away. So if you guys come to us on Mondays, you could see us paint Marvel Crisis Protocol models. But I use contrast paint to paint that. So it's not... So you would say it's one coat magic. But what I actually did was I threw the one coat on, but then I actually went back and re-layered the paint to make darker areas. So what you start to get when you do that, and I will show you Deadpool, we didn't finish him yet. But what you start to get when you do that is you start to get instant lines, but that's because I'm going back over it. And then in some cases, I'm also mixing in GW paint so that there's both line work and details and other things that are happening to bring in other effects and other colors. So, and then I'm going in and doing highlights. Like I used the contrast to make it cool so it was dark, but then I went back in with a lighter contrast to lighten up things. So I'm actually using contrast plus Citadel traditional paint. So I'm actually kind of using a hybrid. I was gonna say these. Here's more Warhammer stuff, but these are Space Marines. This is actually a little bit more. I did one coat. This is actually me. So when I did this on purpose because I wanted to show people like a simpler color scheme where it was less pass and less detail of paint. This is a little bit more like one coat. There's still little blemishes and things that I did, but for the most part, it's very, very simplistic. So, it's decent. But what also is true is it's about control. It's about, like I said, waiting for things to dry, giving it that time to dry. But I've been doing contrast painting for a while, and I love it. I love my contrast paints. You know, like even this. This was done all with contrast paints. Only thing wasn't done was the metallics, because you don't have metallic colors. But again, it's all about how you layer it. See how I went back in and I layered that? Yes. Contrast is more like watercolors, because contrast paint, if you look at it, it has more of a water consistency. But that's part of why it's so great, because it does do that one coat thing where it does pool. So like when I painted this area, it automatically went into all those grooves. So it does do that, but then it's so thin, the paint, it's so watered down that you can go over it and over and over it and build it to darken it, and you're not losing the detail. You're not losing the areas of the model. So contrast paints are 100% great. And even if you're not going to use them for... so see, you'll see it. You're going to see it right now. I'm going to go in and see how it hugs all those details on those minis. So see how it hugged all that detail? And this is actually good that I'm doing this, because I plan on coming in with lighter paint to go on the front of the belly to make it a lighter color. So this is going to all work out perfect for me. But you can see it already pooled and it already created depth and detail. So if you're doing it with, I don't know what you're trying to paint. What do you, I know you said you don't do minis, but what were you thinking of painting with it, if I may ask? So you can see how awesome it looks. And then because it's very opaque, see how I go with a light color on top of a dark color and it doesn't overlap. It doesn't rewrite that color. Maybe resin too. I plan to use it for polymer clay. Oh yeah, resin. So this is 3D printed filament. I paint those with it. This is resin. Oh geez. This is a resin model. I paint that with it. Doesn't matter what you're painting. You can use contrast on all of it. I really love contrast. And again, the way you do it, you block it out. You block out your colors. You block out what you're going to paint. And then you do exactly what I'm doing and just go back into it and you build up those color areas that you want. And what's really cool about things like the contrast is that you can also... what people don't realize about it is that you can mix it. You can mix it and make the paint heavier or lighter. So you can put a white in there, or you can put another color and actually darken your paint. So if you see what I'm doing now, I'm just going in and I'm following muscle tones, and I'm just lightening up those. I'm darkening where muscles are cutting into it, while also filling in those gaps of things that I didn't necessarily paint. So I'm going over that area. But then I'm also bringing in colors. So I'm taking any areas I might have missed, and I'm trying to bring some dark into light. So like I'm finding, because he's a troll, so he's got a lot of wrinkles. So you can start seeing how I'm carving out the muscle tone. And I don't want to cover those pimples, but I started going in. So let me get those details done, and then I'll start going back in. But you're getting the idea of what it looks like. So see, and then I can just buff that out, bring that in, and then it becomes a nice tone, and you're going to start to see this like really nice, he's going to just like pop, he's going to start popping a lot. So you can already see it, that like, because I'm going to put in a highlight on those elbows. I'm going to do different things to bring out other aspects of it. So I'm just kind of bringing it all together now. Ooh, okay, there we go. Got some people watching. Love it. All right, everybody was just like shuffling in. First hour was like everybody was just like getting ready. I'm gonna let that dry for a minute. I want to just grab something to drink, so I can have the rest of my voice, because I've been doing a lot of videos. I did like 5 hours of videos today. I feel like someone just followed me. I know Izzy Games followed me, which I appreciate. An Astro 92. I hope that was helpful. But yeah, I paint all kinds of models, because I get a lot of different like third-party models and other stuff. So 100% I've painted resin with it every day. It's all about priming it. It's all about getting a good primer, and the contrast primer, which I'll show you guys on camera while I'm waiting for this to dry. But this is the primer I use, which is Citadel Gray Seer. So there's two primers for contrast. There's a Gray Seer primer, which is a gray. So it's meant for what I'm doing here. Like if your model is going to primarily have cooler colors, and then a Wraithbone primer if your character is going to have more warmer colors. So like when I did this one, I did warmer colors because he was going to be yellow, and I did him with like a lighter green because I like, and you'll see we'll go over how I do orc flesh tone. But what's up, Vamp? How are we this evening? Troll is coming along nicely. Yes, it is. Yeah, we got some details on him now, and I'm gonna make a slight lighter purple that's gonna just be some highlights. So we're gonna do. So I'm definitely gonna be doing some more to him. And I was showing off some other stuff. I still have to test the paint on polymer clay with and without. So I will tell you this. No. So you cannot use contrast with no primer. You can't. So you don't even have to test it without primer. It will not work without primer. You have to use primer with contrast. You have to. Because if you put it on anything that's a darker color, so a gray or a black, or any of those things, the contrast won't work. Because that's the whole idea of contrast, is that it is a opaque paint. So you only see the pigment of the paint if it's being put on white, on something that's light. It will not work on dark colors. So if you're going to use darker colors, then you want to use the Citadel regular paint, because that's more like acrylic. They all are acrylic paints. They're all water-based paints, but this is more like traditional acrylic, where you can put this on top of something and it will. The primer will help it to look dark, like better, and will cling to the model better with primer. But this is more like traditional paint. Yeah. So Citadel paint is more traditional layer paint, where I lay down my dark colors to my light colors, and that's how I paint. Contrast is the opposite. You do your light to your dark. Because you can't see light colors on dark colors. So it's actually the flip. So like you said, with watercolors, it's the same thing with watercolors. You do light colors down, and then you darken the color to build it. Same thing as watercolor versus traditional acrylic paint. Yeah, so I can save you the trouble of the testing for that one. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be like a Debbie Downer on the testing. But I'd rather you just get it for me than, you know. I can, I don't have it handy, but I could show you some examples. Yeah, yes, I want to save you guys money. It's an expensive hobby, to say the least. So it is. Yeah, this is a way expensive hobby. You do not. I'm looking to build my paint stock. Now, it should also be mentioned that GW, of course, or Games Workshop, they make paints, but the contract, now that Contra has been out for a while. No, I know. Well, and that's going back to Contrast for a minute, and I think we've talked about this before. That's why I love Contrast, because it takes a lot less contrast paint to make an impact. Like you guys just saw that. This is the magic. I went over that once, and it's pretty decent. It gave me a lot of definition, a lot of whatever. I might do some little tweaking to it, but it is great paint because you need very little of it to get the result you want. Which means when you buy one of those pods for it, you are not going to buy one for a while. So it is a great painting system because I believe it is a cheaper painting system. Contrast is great. All you need is highlights after one pass. Yeah, it really is true. I mean, and you could go and where I think you could start to spend more money, and I think it's kind of cool in that respect, is that if you want to get more into your models and you want to start fooling around, and you guys will see us do some of that with the technical paint. Now, because you saved all this time on the initial paint, you can go in and do those other details with technical paint that would be annoying, It's really great paint. But like I said, the reason that a lot of people stray away from it is that they make a lot of beginning faux pas. So like one of the things you guys are noticing I'm doing, see how I'm loading? First pass is always a loaded brush. So I always load the brush when I do the first pass. But then you guys may notice after I do that first pass with a loaded brush, I go back over it. And what I'm doing when I do that is not just going back over it, but I'm looking at how it's pooling. And if I don't like the way it pooled, I'm pulling it with the brush so I can create better pooling. So like up here, see how I'm evening that out? And then I'm coming down here. So I'm taking that excess paint and I'm redistributing it. And then I may go in with a detail brush and put more in. So it's all about that idea of pooling. Because see what happens if you don't do it? See how this pooled a lot? So if I don't like that, I may be mad at myself for how I did that. So those are little techniques. And then there is also little like pro tip techniques. Like if you want, there are advantages sometimes to undercutting your brush. Like if you want, and you guys have seen me do it. If I want a lighter tone of a certain color, I'll actually cut the brush amount. And those are little things when I first did stuff I wasn't as aware of. But then when I got better at it, I started learning how to control the medium. So there's always a learning curve, especially if you're picking up another painting system. You know, don't think that you're gonna be like avoiding those learns. Like, you're gonna have learn moments, you're gonna have all those things. It's just gonna happen. And as always, I started painting a bunch of stuff and then not getting back to I was starting to do the purple blemishes, and I completely went up. I've been watching some videos, seen something about layers is good for highlighting contrast paints. Meaning the layer paints themselves? Yes. So yeah, you're talking about, I think what you're talking about is oh, that's a base. So yeah, what you're saying is, and I do that. I'll pick up a layer color that is a lighter tone of one of the contrast colors that I have, and then I'll layer it. Most of the time, I have to test the primer anyway, so I'll do the test in one go over the clay, which I can shape in any way and see how it does. Yeah, I guess. But so yeah, if you have to test the primer, that's one thing. But I can tell you that, yeah, basically what what I was trying to say was, if you have to do the test of the primer, that's fine. But don't bother trying to test the paint without primer. That's, I guess, what I was trying to say. Because I could tell you right away, if you don't have primer, it's just not going to work. Because chances are the natural color of the clay is going to be too dark for the primer, for the contrast to be okay on its own. It's very fickle. It has to be light. Like, if the clay is a light gray, then fine. But if it's got any so you can see how that second pass, see how I did a light pass on those pimples the first time, and then I do that second pass. And see how better they look, and they look more brilliant because now the edging got darker, but the top didn't. So that's that re-go. And I should say, I wish you luck with the test. I hope it does work out. Like I said, there are a few models that were like a borderline dark gray that I had from a board game. I think I'm gonna do this as purple. And I actually did them. I just straight primed them with contrast, and they actually did come out okay. The colors are muted a little bit. They're darker because obviously what I painted on top of was very dark. But they actually looked pretty good. The other little trick that you can try, which works somewhat well, is you can what you can also do is you can just slap white paint on it. So not necessarily primer, but if you just painted it white and then did the contrast, that would also work. Like I said, what you'll walk away with will be it'll be a little bit of a, what's the word? The colors will be very, very bright because it's not the tinted contrast like these are, because these are that gray seer is tinted so that it brings out it brings out the cooler colors a lot better. So you'll get more like what I showed on the other side, where you're getting like a more intense purple, because it's just a more intense thing. I love doing these little things, these blemishes, but I also like, what's the word? I love doing them, but then like after a while you're like, you find so many of them that you realize there's like all this little detail on the model. And we haven't even gotten to the orc yet. But yeah, these models take Lothay. I don't remember what I built this as. This one I just built, I think I built the orc that I liked better. I just built what I thought looked cooler. I think I just built what I liked. I mean, I'll sub it. The other one that we reviewed, because I showed off the vulture, that I built as the named character because I wanted to, but yeah. And then I was showing off. You missed it, but I was showing off because we were talking about contrast. I'm gonna let that dry for just a minute. I showed off some Space Marines. That I had done, and I was telling people this was kind of, I did these so I could show people like how fast contrast painting was. So just like a quick marine contrast paint. So I was showing off some of those because I was doing a little bit of touch up on those, because I actually am going to put those as a display. Because if you guys didn't know, I do commission painting. So if you ever were looking to get into these games and wanted to hire someone to paint models, you can jump on my website to find out more about that. I do commission painting, so that's actually going to be on display just as some paint samples. But I thought they came out pretty good. These are the blind pack Marines that you get. So I thought they'd be good as like a kill team set. If somebody wants to just do a kill team group of Space Marines. And I have a group of Chaos Space Marines as well. And I actually have a couple of the Death Guard ones. Is the end to have a picture-like model? What do you mean by that? I guess what's the definition of a picture-like model? Yeah, I mean, having highlights and shadows. Yeah. Yeah, well, you're already seeing shadowing in the model. It's already happening. So what will happen once I build it the way I want and get everything in a good place, like drawn. I do stuff like that. So I like doing models like that. So yeah, it's like drawing. You want to have all of that, but you have to do your light source. So, you know, like this is a good example. See, but you have to remember when you're doing a 3D model. So that's a great example of that. I know I'm doing like a painting tutorial now, which is kind of cool. But you can see, like, I put in dark in the cape. I actually overlaid the cape so it would look dirty, because I looked at one mini and gave me the feel. Because I looked at one mini. Are you talking about my minis, or you're looking at someone else's minis? But yeah, so the idea is that, like, I even put blood in the axe. So yeah, and then you can see there's like all that bone structure and shading. So like all that muscle tone has shading on it. So someone else. Okay. I mean, you can do that. It's all about how you want to do your model. Um, I traditionally, I said to everybody before, I like doing models that look worn. And I'm sorry, I keep showing you guys all like half painted stuff. Here, this is a better example of something. So yeah, it's all about what you want to do. I'm showing models that others on the stream have seen already, but and I would say the answer to that question of when to stop, it depends on it depends on your style. It totally depends on what you're going for, what you're doing. Yeah, it all depends on where what you're trying to get out of your model, and when and what you want it to look like. And most people, I'm gonna fix this because I just realized there's an issue with this. Is that yellow? Yes, it is. I can paint every model that I own. Because I guess when I was painting this, I thought that I had gotten. So this goes back to what I was just saying. I just found a group of pustules that didn't get painted. But yeah, it's all about models are always in the eye of the beholder. I mean, like, the problem with this hobby is that you can go you can go as much and as little as you want to go. Oh geez. Okay, well, didn't hit models. That's good. All right, so note to self: do not leave. All right, so let's move this. I'm going to be cleaning this further because I have too much stuff in that corner. So sorry, guys. But yeah, I have to move some stuff on the other side of where my camera is, and then I can store all my stuff on that side, more of my paints and my things, so I can have a bigger area to actually work. But what I was going to say before I started fixing a model that I did a long time ago and thought that I had fixed, what I was going to say. Yeah, it's all up to you. They're in the end. In the end, it's your model, so you're gonna want to do it to the level that you feel is adequate. I've said it on this stream a few times, which is being that I am someone who is a commissioned painter. I cannot show up with a model. And I guess the best way to put it is I can't show up with a model that's half done. Like, my models have to be exactly, they have to be traditionally 100%. I'm going to embellish them more. I'm going to do things to them more. I'm going to paint them at a higher level because I have to. I can't afford. There are like two things that were bothering me about this. I can't have my model not be of a high quality because if I'm playing a game with you and you're looking at the model that I have on the table, well, presumably I'd want you to consider hiring me. So I have to make sure that my model is very detailed, interesting, intriguing in the way that it's painted. Sorry. Well, yes. I'm sorry. I am flexing a little bit. I know that. But well, no. So that's one aspect of it, and then there's another aspect of it, which is what is kind of the more common answer, which is that it depends on your unit, because now we're talking about a war game too. So, like something like this, which is the unclean one. You know, he has to be a really detailed, nice model, because he's the model that will be the centerpiece. Like, he's gonna be the general of your army. He's gonna be on the table the whole game probably. And in general, most people would want to take a lot of time on him because he's a very large unit, and he's gonna be there. You know, and typically those units for a lot of people are the ones that they might choose to display, they might choose to do other stuff with. So, like, in general, sorry, I know I stopped painting, so everybody's probably mad because I stopped painting. But yeah, so traditionally that type of unit would be a unit that, or a model, probably you'd go a lot further in. But then something like Space Marines, where you're going to paint, like, you know, you're going to have a ton of Space Marines in your army, you're probably going to paint them with a lot less detail. You're still going to want to do some general highlighting, and you're going to want to do all those things, but you're not going to go nuts on your detail. Like, you're gonna take probably a moment and do a decent paint, and that's where something like the contrast paints become really helpful, because for a lot of people who are doing that kind of painting, they don't want to have to do a lot of detail. So the contrast paints are great for that, because you are simply just, you know, hitting the model with paint. You're getting a lot of detail and stuff right on that first pass. So you don't have to do all of that other work. Now I'm using snakebite leather. I love snakebite leather. It's one of my favorite browns that they make. And I love it for, I do it usually for wood, for tree stuff. Anything in the model that I think is going to be any organic kind of tree. I love doing it for that. It comes very natural and well. The color is really nice. And you can see when you put it up against the skeleton horde, it's a nice brown. It's two nice browns, and one definitely looks lighter than the other one. And then obviously we'll go in and we'll get those holes, and we'll get some of those other things in there. So and I promise, for the folks that are watching also, and I wanted to say this while Entros 92 is on, I will be hopefully this Friday doing some, I am a comic book artist and illustrator, so I'm going to be doing some of my indie comic stuff, and my goal is to do that on Friday night for you guys. So I got my rig and everything set up, so I'm hoping to start doing that so you guys can see some of that stuff as well. Because I do draw, and I am an illustrator, and I do graphic design as well, in addition to painting. And you can check all that out on my website and my Patreon, which there are links below for all of that cool stuff. Oh, that's all tree. I thought that wasn't a tree, but it is. It's all the tree. are starting to move into our troll at the top. Troll at the top. Our orc at the top. Ugh. Speaking is hard. All right, how long have we been going? It's pretty good. Also, it should be mentioned for the folks that were asking lots of questions about contrast paints. Contrast paints can also be put in airbrushes. I always forget to mention that part. I, myself, do not have the ability to have an airbrush in my studio, but they can be put in airbrushes. And again, that goes back to they're so thin because they're more like, as we were saying before, they have more of a watercolor feel. They can be put in airbrushes. And also, it should be mentioned that if you... damn it. Alright, well, it's going to be a metal paint. I'm painting that over with silver, so that'll just cover that up. Screwed up. I thought the top of it was wood. But yeah, so... what I was saying was, it's also worth mentioning that GW does make spray versions of their paints too that are specifically meant to be put into airbrushes. So they have, they have three different systems. They have the contrast system, the traditional Citadel paint system, and the spray system. So technically you can get options in any of those mediums for people that have the ability to spray paint. I particularly don't. I was saying it before. Not that I don't like spray painted models, but I like hand painting models. I think you get more detail and more variation. I discovered contrast in a resin coloring test video. Test was with Asthmatic Blue. Yep, that's going to be this guy. So that is what our troll lighter color is. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely use it. Yeah, but I mean, it is, like I said before, it is, I think contrast is a great paint system. I know a lot of people get real, like, crazy about using contrast, and, we were talking about it in one of the other streams, like, I know people who, just really, like, had a really negative reaction to contrast paints. And I was just like, I don't understand why. I just don't get it. But and honestly, what I think became a lot of the issue with them is that, like I said before, I think it just came down to a lot of people just didn't know how to use them. Like, they didn't understand the concept of how they work, so when they used them, they were like, they got variations that they weren't used to, and I know the biggest, like, immediate complaint I always heard from people was like, oh, they dry really, like, lightly, and I'm like, well, yeah, they dry really lightly if you're not, like, loading it up and really, like, putting the color down. And in some cases, they also they do dry lightly because of the whole idea of re-going over them. So, like, it's a paint system designed for you to go back over it. So, yeah, it comes on really light, but you go back over it, and then you have, the detail and the depth that you were looking for. You just have to. But again, I think it goes back to what I said before, where GW, when they first did contrast, they did kind of market it as this, miracle paint. And when it didn't give the exact Yes, it is translucent paint. Correct. That's why it doesn't dry. That's why it doesn't dry. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna go all brown on that because I'm gonna go over it with metal for the metal bits, so it'll just all work out because I'm gonna cover it up with that. It's translucent paint, so it always is gonna dry a little light because that's the whole idea, is that it's layered on top of the white, so you see the color. But like I said, if you understand that and you just go back over it, you'll get a darker color. It's also, people didn't let it dry. That's the other big thing. That letting it dry for 15 minutes, a lot of people don't do that. And so what they do by accident is they'll go back over it, and you're actually wiping off some of the paint. Like, if you don't let the contrast paint actually dry, if I go back over a wet area, my paintbrush will start pulling. It'll start pulling the paint off. And so that was another thing that people were doing, is when they were painting, they were inadvertently like rubbing the paint off the area, so then the area got lighter just because there was less paint on it and it didn't dry solid. So there's a lot of little tiny technique tricks that you have to know, and a lot of people just didn't know that. So, and I think going back to the issue with GW and Games Workshop is that when they labeled it as this one pass paint, magical thing, when people didn't get like the out of the catalog look to their model, like it didn't look exactly like the painting sample out of a GW catalog or from the website, that was it. They immediately were like, all right, these paints suck. But the reality is they weren't ever going to get that, because the people who do paint samples for GW, they're using spray paint. They're using probably spray paint, and then they're doing hand painting on top of it and layering it. So no one's going to completely replicate that, because unless you have a spray paint machine or the ability to do spray painting at your home, you're not gonna mimic that. Even me on my best day, my models look good. I think I'm a good painter. I hope you guys in the stream think so too, although maybe you think I'm rubbish, which is fine too. I don't know. But I think I'm a pretty decent painter. And I'm not going to get the paint sample, and I don't want the paint sample, to be quite honest with you. I want my model to, again, have its own flavor. A lot of people that change from oil to watercolors to acrylics also have a similar problem. They find acrylics dry too fast compared to their previous medium. Yep, absolutely. And that's, what's funny about that, what you just said, I have both learned oil painting and acrylic painting, so I know the difference. So yeah. So I think that's why for me contrast was so great, because I'm that type of person, because in my art experience I've always dabbled in different mediums. I do different projects and start to dislike just because of the struggle. Yeah, absolutely. See, I've learned so many different ways to do things that learning something new or having a challenge with a technique, it never bothers me, because I'm always using something different. And that's that's both on a practical level and a technology level, because I also do digital art. I do, if you guys look at my web comics, which you can look at if you sign up for certain tiers of my Patreon, you guys can become members and see those. And I'll be adding some more stuff, some more production of a few more strips. I'm actually working on a whole nother strip. I'm almost done with the first few installments, and then you guys will see the production of the others. So if you jump on my Patreon, and actually, funny enough, I'm right now on my Patreon for a lot less than normal. It's actually for the first like 100 people. you can get access to all the content, and you'll actually get access to all of my different content I'll be introducing, plus all the comics. So hence why I'm going to be adding, I'm going to be hopefully adding that Friday show. I don't know if I could do it every Friday. I'm going to try. That's why I'm not going to put it in my schedule. But I'm going to try to be live doing that stuff on Fridays, if I can. So you guys will see me working on, because for that process, I have to redo my drawing table setup for me to be filmed. But I'll be doing the digital stuff, so you guys will be seeing me, because I use an iPad Pro to draw, and honestly, that's taken over a lot of my drawing, especially my sketching. And I have some ideas for some really cool programs that we can do if you guys start to come and join me for those programs. So, as I say it always, if you are following me, make sure that you also have notifications turned on, so it will notify you when I am live. What's up? Would you transfer the pot paint into a dropper bottle? For the regular GW paints, you could. I always did that. I always paint out of the pods. For the contrast paints, you could definitely do it for the contrast paints, because the contrast paints are very, very watery, so they're perfect for drop bottles. I could say with the contrast paints, you don't really lose a lot of paint. You do get a little bit in this, but if you just paint off of that, you're usually pretty good. But yeah, droppers, I do think they're not bad ideas. In fact, I'm going to order a bunch of them myself. The reality was, so this, the area that I'm painting at right now, until recently, I didn't have this set up very well. So now I have a much larger painting setup. I know I'm very tight on my model when I'm painting, but if I pull out for you guys, you can see I have a pretty large array of painting now. So I have a little bit more room. So I will be moving into some dropper bottles, and I'm going to be doing some other stuff. I'm going to get there's going to be some like art stuff on there. And I will say dropper bottles for the contrast are a good idea, because if I have one complaint about contrast paints, it's that if you spill them, so if you spill this bottle, you're going to lose half the bottle. They go everywhere because they're so watery and so, they're just not, they're not thick paint, so they go everywhere. And I learned that the hard way a couple of times, which is why you see I have a much more elaborate painting setup, and more racks and more stuff, because I do not want to be in a situation. And that's why I also adopted, I said it before, I did it for, a little bit of the working too for the paint. But that's another reason. Where's the change? GW will never change that. The reason why GW will never change that is because, so the reason that these bottles are the way that they are is GW actually patented this bottle because they say that it's the best way for you to not lose paint or have it dry out. Problem is you have to clean the top of the bottom. You have to clean the top of the pod, because if you don't clean the top, I can't use this tool to do that. If you don't clean the top of it, you... Yeah, if you don't clean the top of it, then what's going to happen is you're going to... the pod won't close properly. It's not hard to clean them, but you do have to clean them, because then what will eventually happen is that you won't have a complete contact with the pod, which really sucks, and then it will start to dry out. But I will say that with the contrast paints in particular, they actually don't dry out very much. The traditional pods, the smaller ones, they dry out 100%. And part of why that happens is because a lot of people shake their paints. And you probably have noticed I've done it a little bit, and that's really for ones that are almost done. But for the newer ones, I try not to do that. Like if it's a fairly large bottle, I just pop my paint on there, and I actually do it on the lid of it. So I'll do it on the inside so that I'm not creating that situation. But yeah, they're never going to change that, because they all the technical paint that they do, so they make other products that they use those containers for. So they're gonna do it, and like I said, it's so they have it's also cheaper for them to do those bottles. There are other paint companies out there that do not do those bottles. They do the type of bottle you were describing. But yeah, GW, you will notice with GW, I love their products. And I obviously use their paints, and I'm very used to their colors. But they're definitely gonna do whatever is the cheapest, the easiest, and they're not going to always. They're going to err on the side of what makes them the most money, and they will. I'm not going to say that they don't. It's not that they don't care about their fans or people that play the hobby, because they do, and I don't think any company truly doesn't do anything that people say, but they're not going to make big changes that are going to cost big money. They're just not. So much so that even some of the models, I mean, what we're working on now is a new model. This is a new sculpt, a new model. But even the models for the game, they'll make rules around. They'll keep an army with like old models for years, just to not make or have to like do research and development on other models. So like, if you're one of the unlucky folks that just like, happens to like a faction or an army, you may have to play with like old models, and it could be really, it could be annoying, because the good news is that they always incorporate all the models in every army. So, they do a pretty good job of keeping them around. So over the years, if you bought different models from a faction, you obviously can play them with the new things, or they'll integrate them into newer armies, which they did with Age of Sigmar, because they took away fantasy, with the exception of some armies, which Tomb Kings are one of those people. So if you're a Tomb Kings player out there, I'm so sorry. Yeah, they had it in Warhammer Fantasy, but they have not made plans to bring it into the light of any other place as of right now. Although there's a few rumblings. Obviously, they're working on, they are actively working on a new fantasy game. Which I think is essentially just them making another edition of Warhammer Fantasy, which will be interesting because, of course, in Age of Sigmar, there's been all these things created that are not part of fantasy, and they're not originally factions in fantasy. So I'm intrigued to see what that's going to look like. I mean, it would be very dumb on GW's part to not incorporate all the models from Age of Sigmar into fantasy. It would be just stupid. But then again, I thought they were going to do the opposite for Age of Sigmar. I thought they were going to just incorporate all of them, and they did not. You know, there are still armies that were left in the cold. Is that way people get? Yeah, I mean, well, no. So, if you're talking about Kickstarter, so are you talking about? So, if you're talking about Kickstarter, like, do people go on Kickstarter or Etsy or other places to get models? The reason why people do that is because, so there are some people out there that just don't like GW's models. So, I'll give you a for instance. Here's a Mantic. So this is Kings of War. This is another company that makes a different war game. This is their model, and this is a resin model for a dragon. It's an elf on a dragon. And what you will notice right away on this model is it is extremely more detailed. It's extremely more textured. It's extremely more detailed. And quite honestly, it's got, all right, so it's got some wonky stuff with this, which I'm going to have to fix that. But, and that's easy to fix. But it's got a much more dynamic pose. The dragon has a more dynamic pose. In general, the model is slightly more dynamic than other models that we have. I don't have another good example, but if you look at our troll, not that our troll is not a great model, because it is a great model, but he's got a very like stagnant stance. It's not like he's looking like he's ready to fight, but he's not like in mid fight. So one of the criticisms that a lot of GW models get is that they're a little bit more stiff. Not always. I mean, they have some terrifically crazy models, but they'll take like big characters, like I would consider big characters or big monsters or big things, and they sometimes will give them that treatment where they just get very stiff. Whereas other companies will make, they'll make what I would say is a greater effort to make the models a little bit more dynamic or interesting. And so you're getting something that just looks more, and actually Mantic Games is a really good, oh wait, is that metal? Oh, that is all metal. All right, so literally the only thing that's a tree is in this little tiny, okay, that's all right. So like Mantic Games, who makes Kings of War, are great examples of a company that I think makes terrifically cool models that are great. Now, there's another difference between like their models or some of the other models that you might see on Etsy or Kickstarter, and that's going to be price. So the other thing, unfortunately, GW has kind of gotten a reputation for is their models are a little bit more expensive. So in general, if you're looking at GW stuff, you are going to pay more for their things and their models than you would if you were going to a different company. So like, for instance, this model that I'm holding in my hand right now is, I believe, a $50 model. The Vulture I showed you was like a $120 model. So for one model, you're paying almost... What'd you say? So they're very expensive models. Whereas something like Kings of War, Mantic Games, you can buy a whole army for $120, and they're going to give you almost anywhere between 20 to 40 models. But it'll be a variety of models. It'll be an entire army. It'll be a whole range of models. So, that's where people are using. So they're going to go over to, let's say, Mantic Games, and they'll buy models from them, and then they'll use them in their Warhammer army, because they can get, great models, dynamic models, and it's way, way cheaper. And they'll do what they call proxy them. And then it doesn't hurt that, so Mantic Games, just to give a little idea of their history, even though I know we're painting Warhammer stuff, is that the people who started that company were actually former employees of Games Workshop. So what they did, which was really smart in their model, was that I mentioned that Warhammer Fantasy, which was GW's kind of original fantasy realm for models and playing, was getting discontinued. They were getting rid of it to make what we know now as Age of Sigmar. So what was really cool was what the folks over at Mantic Games did was, they, knowing that Warhammer Fantasy was coming to an end, one, they made their game more of a regiment-based game. So, meaning it's a war game of what we call flanks and charges. So you're using big units, you're using blocks of guys, and it's really strategy, like almost more like chess, versus skirmish fighting, which is what Age of Sigmar became. And why there's a difference there is that skirmish fighting, when you do a skirmish-based game, it's usually, you may need more models to play it, which is part of why they went to that model, because then you need more models on the table, or a variety of models, to make different variations of your army, versus something regiment-based where you can really just change the stats of what you have on paper, but you still use essentially the same models. So knowing that they were getting rid of their game, what Mantic Games did was they made their own version of essentially a regiment-based combat game, obviously changing the system and having their own rules and all that stuff. But they made all the models to mimic all of the factions that were in fantasy. So why that was ingenious is that now, set the clock to, nowadays, it was a great idea, because now what they have become is a substitute for Warhammer players. So they'll go to Mantic Games, they'll get a bunch of models for really cheap amounts, and then they'll just use them in their armies. To the point where Mantic has kind of modeled, has marketed at least some of their products in ways that it definitely it's definitely been like a competitive thing. The most recent funny thing was when they did so Mantic Games made this amazing giant model. It's a great model, it's super awesome, it's super cool. And they made this giant model, and then GW in response made a whole faction in Age of Sigmar that were giants, and it was in direct relation to them making that giant model, because they knew people were gonna buy their models, so they wanted to make a reason for people to possibly want, you know, the giant models they already had. So it just kind of shows how much of, you know, so just how much of a force it is. But that, I'm sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to your question. But that is why people do that. They're doing it for that reason. So that, yes, in some cases it is variety. That is a piece of it. But in a lot more cases, the value proposition for that is that exactly that. They want to get models cheaper than paying the prices of GW. Because it is extremely, it can be extremely pricey, specifically depending on the army or faction that you have, because they all play differently and they all have like different requirements. Just painting the wire for the prod, because it's kind of crazy, but he has like I believe it's a magical prod, or that's like to keep it on him, but I think it electrocutes the orc, if I'm not mistaken. The orc, the troll. I keep saying orc instead of troll, but I'm pretty sure that's the point of it. It's to electrocute the orc. God damn it, the troll. I'm saying the wrong thing. Which I think is utterly insanely cool, by the way. I love that the orcs are like enslaving things. Because if you are familiar with the lore of this game, the idea is that these particular orcs, who look very different than the orc I showed a minute ago, the one that I painted, they are what are called the smart orcs, aka the ones who stand up on two legs. So they are supposed to be smarter, so they use a lot more tactics to win against the Stormcast Eternals. So which are essentially knights. Think of them as celestial knights. They're like non-specific Thors. So they're not like North gods. They're just like these giant golden armored knights that are like use lightning. So they're very much like North characters, Norse mythology, but they are not. So now I'm starting to do the orcs bits. I'm using, I always forget what this is called, Plague Bearer Flesh. So you are supposed to use this for like diseased people, but the green is so nice and it's so perfect for orcs. And then I use a darker green to go in and do a little bit more highlighting, but I love it as a base tone green. And then I'll go in more. But you can see again how I do that initial big hit of green, and then you can see how nice it just pops in all that color. Now the only little thing is that I don't know how I'm going to do. I don't know what color I want to do all the banners and stuff. I'm just getting that green in there for right now. Oh, you guys are awesome. All right, I'm probably going to call it because, oh, geez, it's already like 1 in the morning. All right. And my arms, they be getting a little on the tired side. I can definitely feel my arm getting a little bit more buffed because I've been holding it. I have held it, speaking in English in the way in which it was intended, could sometimes be hard. Let's not argue that point together, shall we? But the I have been holding my hands in such a position that they are starting to get sore. Because I played a bunch of the new Guardians of the Galaxy video game, which, if you guys have not seen the Square Enix Guardians of the Galaxy video game and would like to watch a playthrough of at least the first couple of chapters, you can definitely check those videos out. I put those up today, and like I said, I was a little overzealous because I was like, well, I'll be honest. I wasn't like, I mean, I did do it for everybody because I did want everybody to see a brand new game, because seeing a brand new game is always awesome. But I did it to be a little self-serving because I'll be real honest, I really liked the game. The game was super awesome. So I was like, I played a little bit of it, and then I was like, oh, I know I have to do one of these painting videos, but I really want to play a little bit more. So I jumped on, played a little bit more, and then of course it made me super late for this. So I'm sorry, guys. But it was super cool. It's so good. Oh, that's gonna be fun. I'm gonna definitely put I'm definitely gonna put some wounding in there. We'll put some blood in there. Make it super cool. Wow. That's another thing. I tend to paint with way too big brushes. And I just did it, so there we go. That's perfect. Sometimes I will go into a model with way too big of a brush. Most of the time, I'm pretty good about it because I've gotten used to doing it. Because I just, I want to get that color laid down. I want to block it out. I don't think I have the patience to paint minis. Oh, yes, you do. Trust me. If you go the route of using stuff like, if you use that contrast paint to do minis, you definitely will have the patience to do it. The contrast paint makes it easier. It really does. Like, and you said the magic words already, which is, but you said the magic words, and the magic words are, if you're willing to experiment, then you would do fine. Because that's really what, as long as you experiment and you get used to the medium, and you know that you have to get used to the medium, it's not, your patience level will definitely it'll be fine. Because that's what really, I would say, is the downfall of most people who paint minis. Is that they're not willing to they're not willing to fail, I guess is the better way to put it. Like, you're gonna have failures, but if you're in that mindset that you have to like try, then you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be super fine. Yeah, I mean, well, and that's another thing too. So, like, that's a good example. Like, when you're doing big models like this one, it's much easier to paint. It's about 3 inches. Yeah, so that's dragons I would never do. I mean, even when they did dragons, like, think of this dragon. I mean, this dragon's only 3 inches tall. But then you'll see they economized a lot of details. So, like, in the head, they economized a lot of details. There's a lot of good texture here, which you don't see in this model, as much texture, as much realism. But you in a 3-inch model, you're going to sacrifice some of your details. Obviously, if you make the model bigger, you can always get more detail into it. Like, that's what I say about... a great example is the Marvel Crisis Protocol models. They're a lot bigger in size. These are based off of a 32mm scale, but these are based off a little bit more like a 40mm scale. So each of these characters can have a lot more detail. Because if you look, you know, they're rough. They're kind, like, they're not the same size, because I think I'm influenced by watching artists doing the small things. Yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's all about that scale. Because, like, if this is a person, so if that's the scale of a person, then a dragon in this scale are very imposing big models. So they're going to have a lot of detail. So yeah, so like, whereas in this scale, and that's where Mantic Games models, not to say that they're lesser of a GW model, but they haven't revised all their models as much. So like they're a little bit more still like the early days of GW, where not that they're goofy, but they can sometimes have a little bit more of a cartoony feel, because like the person and the dragon are kind of like the same size, or the expressions are not as detailed, whereas they've refined their models and molds to be a lot more highly detailed. So all right, guys. Well, I think I'm gonna call it there, because I'm getting a little on the tired side, and me tired trying to paint stuff is always fun, because then I start getting really wacky. I know we've been painting this for 2 hours. I think we got to a good spot on it, but obviously there is a lot more to do. I may or may not try to paint this off camera. Not to say I paint slower when I'm on camera, but we're talking, I take breaks, I pause. So it is a little bit different, and when I can hold the model a little bit differently and get to certain things, sometimes I can go through it a little quicker. But I might get a little further along, just so you guys can see a further along model, because I feel like I'm taking too long. Versus like my Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff, where I feel like we make a little bit more headway, or we go a little faster. But I want to try to get a little bit more going on. I mean, right now, probably the first thing you're going to see us play is Marvel Crisis Protocol, only because I have so much more of it painted. What's hitting me hard there is the terrain. I have to get the terrain painted. But I hope you guys like the model we painted, the troll. We're going to get more and more stuff done. Definitely got more in the pipeline. So, and I have a ton of other models coming for a very funny D&D campaign, which I'm super, super excited for. So tomorrow we'll do some Mantic model painting. We're going to finish up the vampire. We're going to work on some dragons. So if you're a dragon fan, that's actually a good stream to come on. Because I'll hopefully be able to prime all the dragons tomorrow. So I'll be able to paint them tomorrow on the stream. If not, I still have 1 or 2 dragons left that I might be able to paint. So, alright guys, as always, if you haven't followed us, please do. If you haven't signed up for notifications, please do. And if you could check out my website, Patreon, and such. And I also totally forgot. Thanks for answering my questions. You're welcome, my friend. I also forgot to actually talk about my sponsor for this video, which was Undiscovered Realms. I feel so bad. I've talked about them at least once or twice this week. But Undiscovered Realms, you can see a link on the bottom of my stream. They're the store I get all of my supplies from, my models. They're great guys to get paints from. They have a ton of tabletop models from a variety of different places, whether it's Marvel Crisis Protocol, Games Workshop, Star Wars Legion, even D&D models. It's all there. So please, please, please check them out. They also have collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Dragon Ball Super. So if you're into any of that stuff, jump there as well like I am. I'm into all of those things, so I get all my stuff from them. They are awesome guys. They are super, and they are the people who allow me to have the models I have, because they're always on top of it and making sure I get what I need when it comes out. So it is always, always good. Please support them. You got my tip/donation button is down there. My Patreon links are there for it. Please, if you can, support it. I mean, There's a variety of tiers to support. That monetary support is going to allow me to keep doing this, allow me to do this on a more regular basis, and allow me to do a lot of the other things I want to do, such as merchandise and other things I want to offer to you guys. But the reality is I need the funds to do it. So, and I would love to do all of this on a more full-time basis for everybody. So, all of that can happen with that monetary support. But if that's a tough thing to do right now, or you're not in the situation where you can do that, remember, sharing, telling your friends about us, all that good stuff keeps us afloat and here and allowing me to do this. So if you can inform others, please do. And we'll be catching, so again, I'll be painting some Mantic Games models tomorrow. Thursday we're going to do, I think, maybe we'll try a different board game. I don't know. Or we'll try something else. But we're going to try some other things. I have some cool stuff, or a board game we can play for Halloween, which might be a nice idea. But I will have to arrange that video a little differently. But yeah, so we'll do that Thursday night. We'll have some video Thursday night. I don't know what it is, but we'll figure it out. And we'll have my two favorite friends with me as always, and eventually we'll have our actual campaign running on that day as well. So, all right, guys, this is the long outro. I'm sorry, but take care. I'll see you at the next video. We'll see you tomorrow. And if you want to check out other videos, like the first part of the Troll Paint, or the other Marvel Crisis Protocol models that we painted, please look at the other videos on the channel. And like I said, please consider following us so we can have you here next time and sign up for notifications. I also have two videos, Part 1 and Part 2, of the first 4 chapters of Guardians of the Galaxy. Just came out from Square Enix. It is a phenomenal game, so if you want to check that out, you can see me playing that. It was so much fun. And I'll see you guys at the next video. Take care, everybody.